It's 5:05 and welcome into a Friday edition of the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110 99.3 WBT. I'm Nick Craig. Good morning to you. We're tracking some updates out of the North Carolina General Assembly this morning. Democrats there want to expand in-state tuition benefits to illegal immigrants living in the state under a bill titled In-State Tuition Equality. Senate Bill 691 was introduced yesterday, and it would allow undocumented immigrants to qualify for in-state tuition at the University of North Carolina system, or the UNC system, as well as community colleges if they graduated from a North Carolina high school and attended North Carolina schools for at least 2 years. The bill is sponsored by Senator Muhammad out of Mecklenburg County, Senator Meyer out of Orange County, and Senator Murdoch out of Durham County. One of the bill's key provisions is that undocumented immigrants would need to submit an affidavit affirming they intend to legalize their immigration status when eligible. Additionally, the bill includes a provision ensuring that any information submitted during the in-state tuition application process will remain confidential and is not considered a public record. There is no action expected on the bill. Democrats have filed an array of controversial issues over the last 2 weeks as the bill filing deadline draws close. The Senate filing deadline was Tuesday, and the House filing deadline is next Thursday. Other noteworthy bills include Senate Bill 404, which would allocate $500,000 to the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources for a study on establishing a professional wrestling museum. Notably, the proposal was filed by both House Democrats and Republicans. On the House side, House Bill 339 has gained media attention in recent days as Democrats rally to raise North Carolina's minimum wage to $22 an hour. While reports suggest that the bill has the potential to succeed, Democrats are in the minority in both chambers, and the bill is unlikely to move forward. Looking at this bill, Senate Bill 691, Representative Brendan Jones commenting, posting this on the X platform yesterday morning, saying, quote, North Carolina Democrats waited until the filing deadline chaos to quietly introduce Senate Bill 691, a bill that would give illegal immigrants in-state tuition at North Carolina colleges. They didn't want you to notice, but we did. That's the comments there from Representative Brandon Jones. A lot of legislation being introduced back and forth over the last couple of days. Many of it, those especially introduced by Democrats, who, of course, are in the minority in both the House and Senate, do not appear that they will move substantially in one way or the other. We'll continue to track the details right here on the Carolina Journal News Hour, where it's now 5:08, News Talk 1110 99.3 WBT. We are tracking some legislation out of Raleigh this morning in regards to medical rights and medical freedom. To get some additional details on that, Jeff Moore, CarolinaJournal.com, joins us this morning on the News Hour. Jeff, medical freedom has been a large discussion going on about 4 or 5 years now, going back to the COVID-19 pandemic. Walk us through some legislation we learned about in the middle half of the week out of the GA.
Yeah, it's actually after the whole COVID experience and the kind of legislative and policy struggles we've had there, I'm surprised it took this long to get House Bill 519, which would be a medical parental bill of rights that would actually require parental consent for all sorts of healthcare decisions going on with children under the age of 18, mental health, substance abuse appointments, vaccinations, sexually transmitted diseases, birth control, all sorts of things like this that they may be having conversation with doctors or school medical staff about. Currently, it seems as if the children are allowed to sign a waiver that would allow their parents access to some of this information, allow them to be included in the conversations and have access to the medical records. And so some of the representatives in the North Carolina House don't see that as something that is very tenable. They're looking to change the law to require parental consent for these kind of conversations in hospital settings, doctor's offices, and in school settings with school nurses up until the federally recognized age of responsibility being 18 years old.
You know, this is kind of a timely story. It's just 1 week ago, we got a big decision from the state Supreme Court as it related to a family in Guilford County that had a situation with essentially a forced mandated vaccination back in 2021. Jeff, this is still a major issue for parents across North Carolina.
Yeah, this is huge, and we're entering an era really where there's a lot more skepticism of like kind of the medical complex in general, vaccinations, obviously with the COVID-19 vaccine and the issues they've had there. There's been some hesitancy, and obviously it became a political struggle with the mandates of the vaccines and those couple years we went through. So it's hard to believe here in 2025 that they're really in such a state of coercion for the vaccinations in 2020 and beyond. But now we actually see some of these cases matriculating through the courts. You mentioned that Supreme Court case where they reactivated that case and sent it back to the Court of Appeals where it will be adjudicated. And that will open up maybe a whole other can of worms for any of those institutions that were involved in the kind of coercive forcing of the vaccines during that era. But this bill, House Bill 519, is kind of moving in that direction to make sure that parents are as involved as they should be in these things, and that there can't be anything happening kind of under their noses that they don't know about. Because if you have a 14 or 15-year-old in the school system talking to the nurse about certain things that you're going to want to know about, allowing the children to make that decision to withhold information is not suitable in the eyes of these lawmakers. So they filed this bill, and we will follow that legislation and see how it tracks through the General Assembly.
Well, and that kind of adds up with something else that we've seen over the last couple of years, Jeff. Outrage from parents as their children were going to school, going by different genders, by different names. Parents had absolutely no idea this was happening. And as you noted, and I'll stress again, these are minors that we're talking about. We're not talking about 18-year-olds that are free-willed to make their own decisions, Jeff. We're talking about 12, 13, 14-year-olds. These are still children, not only in the eyes of the law, but in the real world. This is a major discussion.
Yeah, so certainly a lot of those instances have happened where you've had kids coming home from school and all of a sudden they're using different language, referring to themselves in different ways, and only to find out that they've actually been working with a counselor for the last 6 or 8 months of their school, going through some sort of identity transition there. And that's completely untenable. As a father myself, I find that untenable. But the lawmakers here filing this legislation, they definitely have those kind of things in mind with filing this bill. Access to medical records, any of the medical notes that are taken by like school medical staff, or even just the conversations that you have with the doctors or in hospital settings. Now, there are some exceptions because there are some very practical things that you would want the children to actually have some access to a medical professional or some authority figure privately. So if there are cases of abuse, there are still carve-outs for things like this so that a doctor or a medical professional or a school official can actually speak with a child and have them let them know some of that information if they are facing abuse in their home, so they can go ahead and forward that information to DHHS and to Child Protective Services and to police if necessary. So there are carve-outs to keep children protected, but this is really kind of pushing for further protection for children and parents being the first and foremost, the first line of defense in protecting those children. So it's definitely going to track through the General Assembly here with the majority in both the House and the Senate. We'll see if it's something that Governor Josh Stein would be willing to sign if it gets to his desk.
That's going to be my last question for you. This bill was introduced on Wednesday. Is this something that just Republicans are running with? Is there any Democrats speaking out in support? Where's this kind of falling in regards to party lines?
Yeah, so far the primary sponsor and the co-sponsors are all Republicans at this point. The environment doesn't seem, even though it's cooled off culturally in the last 12 months or so, as far as the political allegiances to some of these policy sets, I've got to imagine that the Democratic minority in the House is going to be opposed to this bill because they want to have more kind of open conversations with medical professionals and school medical staff among students in the name of, in their view, in protecting children and allowing them to actually explore maybe some of the transitions and identity crises that they're going through and out of the watchful eye of a potentially kind of domineering parent. That's probably a line of articulation that you'll hear from the Democratic side of things. But right now, it looks like it's a pretty partisan supported bill with the Republicans on one side, the Democrats on the other.
Thanks for the update this morning. Jeff Moore from CarolinaJournal.com joins us on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Where it's now 5:14, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. It's time to get a look at your early morning Friday commute and update on the roadways with the great Boomer Von Cannon.
Thanks so much, Nick.
We're heading back to Heist Brewery and Barrel Arts on Wednesday, April the 16th from 7 to 9 p.m. for WBT's News and Brews, and we'd love to see you there. All of your WBT friends will be in attendance to raise a glass with you and talk about the news of the day. It's WBT's News and Brews headed your way Wednesday, April the 16th at Heist Brewery and Barrel Arts. You can get tickets and event details this morning by visiting WBT.com. There's a big banner right there on the homepage. We look forward to seeing you Wednesday, April the 16th. It's now 5:21. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110 99.3 WBT. We are continuing to track wildfires this morning on the show as they continue to burn across western North Carolina, and we are hearing from state forest officials that 2 fires burning in Polk County are the highest priority fires in the United States as millions of residents across the region remain under alert for wildfires. Burn bans continue in effect. The weather conditions for fires continue to be very, very dangerous, with hundreds of Polk County residents already being forced from their home for several days as the Black Cove complex fire grew and spread into neighboring Henderson County. The National Weather Service has issued a red flag warning for parts of both counties, indicating the potential for severe fire behavior and the possibility of rapid fire spread. The Black Cove fire ignited on March the 19th by a downed power line and is one of 3 major fires burning in the county. It has scorched nearly 5 square miles as of this morning. Fortunately, the containment does continue to rise. It's now 17% contained. The Forest Service said, quote, "For a second day, fire behavior has been intense with rapid fire spread and extreme burning conditions due to high winds and dry weather." That was yesterday out of the North Carolina Forest Service. Also burning in the state, the Deep Woods fire, not too far from the Black Cove fire, also in Polk County, more than 3,200 acres in size and currently 11% contained. And the Fishhook fire, 199 acres in size, 86% contained. So fortunately, that smaller fire is under containment as firefighters continue preparing fire breaks and protecting homes and businesses in anticipation of higher temperatures, stronger winds, and low humidity. Those 3 things combined are a major problem for firefighters and those conditions. Governor Josh Stein said in a social media post yesterday, quote, "We are still under a statewide burn ban. I continue to urge residents to pay close attention to local emergency alerts and evacuation notifications." So the conditions are not going to be favorable this weekend as well. Some rain might move into the area, but it's not going to be widespread enough or heavy enough in terms of downpours to really have a huge impact. We'll continue to watch this over the weekend, and as we get updates from the Forest Service, we'll pass them along to you right here on the Carolina Journal News Hour. In some other statewide news this morning, the North Carolina State Treasurer Brad Briner announced yesterday that his office has entered into a 12-week agreement with OpenAI that he says will modernize systems and streamline data processing while providing more efficient and effective services to taxpayers and local governments, all of that while saving money. The announcement took place yesterday at North Carolina Central University's Student Center in Durham, which is the AI hub for the area's HBCUs. The university will also open its Institute for Artificial Intelligence in May, which will help train people on how to use OpenAI in the workforce to make things more efficient. The provost of NC Central said, quote, "This partnership is not just about technology for technology's sake. It's about ensuring that artificial intelligence is developed and deployed in ways that are ethical, safe, and have lasting positive impacts. It's about harnessing artificial intelligence to make sure our governments are more responsive, more transparent, and more forward-looking in the face of many challenges and opportunities in the 21st century." Briner said since taking office less than 3 months ago, his team has been finding new ways to modernize their office. That includes technology and the important part of using data. Briner told the audience efficiency, effectiveness, and return on investment. These are the things that everybody should expect for government, and we're happy to say that those are the top priorities of the Department of the State Treasurer. Now, of course, that brings forward a question about protecting personal data. Briner stressed that there is a bright red line where private, personal data exists, such as things like health records in the state health plan cannot be used due to things like HIPAA restrictions and other privacy issues. Instead, his office will use OpenAI in matters involving their state and local government's finance division, as well as the unclaimed property division, since that information is already publicly available. Most of that is just as simple as going online and searching for it. Normally, local governments send the division several pages of information, such as audits and financial disclosures, and to sort through that to ensure their debt is under control. With this partnership with OpenAI, that's the group behind ChatGPT, they will be able to help summarize reports, identify warning signs in local government's financial audits, or do deep data searches for unclaimed property, mainly for businesses with special research tabs, while allowing those in the department to focus on higher-level strategic decision-making and a stronger relationship for financial stewardship. The treasurer said, quote, "We have more than 1,100 towns, counties, and municipalities in the state, and we can do an even better job of making sure they are not in financial trouble, that we spot warning signs in advance." Setting up some of those safeguards is an important piece of the puzzle. Briner also stressed that OpenAI isn't replacing human experience or taking away jobs in the short term. In its augmenting of the office's capabilities, it is enabling them to make more information-driven data decisions to get money out of local governments that need to make quick decisions. There is also safeguards in place, a special button that will keep any information from the treasurer's office that they receive in a private form, and internal will not go out to the world of AI for public viewing. The treasurer also said that his office has looked at and considered the framework that the North Carolina Department of Information Technology released for state agencies and their use of AI, and has consulted with them before this announcement. In addition, he is aware of other departments in state government that are considering using OpenAI to find different solutions to issues. The 12-week Memorandum of Understanding is being offered for free. The chief economist for OpenAI told reporters at the announcement in Durham, quote, "We think partnerships like this are going to show the benefits of technology and how it serves all of humanity." The one of the chief economists for OpenAI is a Durham native. He was the 2020 Democrat candidate for state treasurer. Funny enough, he lost to former Republican treasurer Dale Folwell. He said, quote, "When you get into the hands of innovation, state leaders like the treasurer and people who are on his team who are adopting this technology, you are going to see great benefits, and that's great for OpenAI, it's great for ChatGPT, and it's great for the mission that we have as an organization." He told the audiences that North Carolina is already a leader in AI and is a top 10 state in terms of the usage of the platform, with the number one use being in education and in learning. He continued by saying, quote, "We have a fantastic set of universities and higher education institutions, our community college system. Places like North Carolina Central, they're leading with the way of their new AI Institute. We think about the future, and it's going to be based on generative AI-associated technologies. And when I look around the country, I can't see any other state that is going to be as well-positioned as North Carolina. One of the reasons is that our economy has been growing for a long time. It goes back to the investments that were made in the 60s and 70s in the Research Triangle Park area and places around the state. What did it take to make those investments? It wasn't just one business, and it wasn't just one university. It wasn't just one person in government. It was a collective effort that laid the foundation for our great state. Treasurer Briner told reporters that if the 12-week agreement proves to be advantageous for the state, then they will have further discussions on next steps for the future of the use of that in the treasurer's office. This is a major story this morning. OpenAI, ChatGPT, everybody has heard, is familiar. Many folks have used it. A major announcement from the state treasurer's office. We'll track that 12-week agreement and see what comes of it right here on the Carolina Journal News Hour. And, of course, on our website, carolinajournal.com, where it's now 5:30. News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Time to get another look at the roadways on your Friday morning commute and update with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, thank you.
It's 5:37. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. I'm Nick Craig. Good Friday morning to you. The North Carolina House of Representatives approved a bill earlier this week targeting gift card theft, a crime that can result in does result in tens of millions of dollars in losses and leaves customers with empty, unusable gift cards. House Bill 315 adjusts the penalties for two criminal acts. One, the unlawful entry into a business, and the second, gift card theft. The main focus is on the latter. Thieves take gift cards from store racks, record their information, and then return them to the store. When an unsuspecting customer purchases the gift cards, the thieves can steal the funds once the card is activated, leaving the buyer with a worthless piece of plastic. Representative Reese Pyrrell out of Rockingham County said, "What's really got this discussion going up is apparently now there's individuals that go into retail stores, take gift cards off the racks, take the numbers, and then put them back on there. Then somebody comes in to buys them, and the money is gone before the individual can even leave the store." The bill seeks to criminalize the following actions: acquiring or retaining possession of a gift card or gift card redemption information without the consent of the card holder or the card issuer, obtaining gift card information through fraudulent means, and altering or tampering with gift cards or their packaging with the intent to defraud others. If the value stolen is less than $1,000, the offense would be classified as a Class 1 misdemeanor. If the stolen amount exceeds $1,000, the crime would escalate to a Class H felony. The proposal was met with overwhelming support in the House. Representative Laura Budd, the Democrat out of Mecklenburg County, described to the legislators how criminals operate, stealing the card information and returning them to the store. Here's a Representative Budd out of Mecklenburg County discussing this earlier this week, Tuesday afternoon, in the General Assembly.
For y'all, when we talk about gift card theft, and this was brought to my attention, I thought it was a $20 Starbucks card. I said, what are you doing? No, let's try more like tens of millions of dollars in gift cards. They are stolen from the stores. They are taken back to some shady place where the information is taken off the back and stored, and then they are returned to that store where they were initially stolen from. So that when the person, like Representative Helfrich, goes and buys her $20 Starbucks gift card, before she ever gets to give it to the person to whom she wants to gift it to, the data is stolen and so is the money, and the gift card is useless. Tens of millions of dollars and organized crime. It's a good bill. Thank you for teaching me something new. And by the way, you sounded like a lawyer.
That's Representative Budd describing this in the General Assembly earlier this week. The bill did pass its second and third readings in the House with a unanimous vote and now heads to the North Carolina Senate for further consideration. If enacted, House Bill 315 would provide North Carolina with stronger legal tools to fight organized retail crime and protect consumers from falling victim to gift card scams and gift card fraud. A nice bipartisan piece of legislation this morning. We'll continue to track it over on our website, carolinajournal.com, and right here on the Carolina Journal News Hour, where it's now 5:41, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. We are continuing to track details on what has been a very wild couple of days weather-wise across the state of North Carolina and South Carolina with some major wildfires burning. There's going to be a visit a little bit later on this week from the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Brooke Rollins is set to visit the state of North Carolina to get some additional details on that this morning. Katie Zehnder, carolinajournal.com, joins us on the News Hour. Katie, it was a rough couple of days. The conditions were just absolutely perfect for these wildfires to burn out of control. We saw that in South and North Carolina over the last couple of days. What are you learning about the Secretary's visit?
Right. So Secretary Rollins, who is the newly confirmed Secretary of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, is set to visit both North and South Carolina on Friday in the aftermath of these wildfires that erupted over the weekend. We saw these wildfires break out starting on Saturday. The main one that most people know about happened near Myrtle Beach in the Carolina Forest in South Carolina, located in Horry County. But a lot of people also don't know that several counties across, unfortunately, western North Carolina also broke out with wildfires. Some of these counties include Polk County, Cherokee County, Haywood, Carteret, and Montgomery County. So according to a social media update from the National Forest Service, the U.S. Forest Service in North Carolina, it was posted on Sunday. Wildfires are active in Natahala National Forest, Cherokee County, Pishka National Forest, Croatian National Forest, and Uwharrie National Forest in Montgomery County. So 4 of the major national forests here in North Carolina have had wildfires break out across them. By Sunday evening, more than 500 acres had been burned, and fires were 30% contained by Sunday evening. I did speak to the public information officer with the U.S. National Forest Service in North Carolina, and he said crews are continuing to make progress on the 3 largest fires, which include the Falls Dam Fire, which is 505 acres, the Uwharrie National Forest, which is 110 acres, and the Croatian National Forest, which is 150 acres, and that one is 40% contained. The one in Uwharrie National Forest is fully contained, and Falls Dam Fire is 65% contained, and that is what they told me yesterday. And then in Polk County, fires broke out approximately about 1:30 p.m. on Saturday, and it spread to 400 acres by 9 p.m. on Saturday. The fires downed a power line near Highway 176 and threatened the towns of Melrose, Saluda, and Tryon, where mandatory evacuation orders were issued, according to news reports. Unfortunately, these towns are not that far from Asheville, North Carolina, which unfortunately is where a lot of the damage from Helene was. I think they're about 40 miles south of Asheville. So unfortunately, Western North Carolina has been really hit hard in the last, 8 months or so. There is rain expected midweek here, so that could potentially, put these fires to rest, but the U.S. Forest Service says they are fully prepared to combat an active fire season in the South. Secretary Rollins said in a press release, the brave men and women of the U.S. Forest Service began responding immediately to the fires in the Carolinas. We will ensure they have resources, personnel, and the support they need to swiftly put out the fires. And then she goes on.
You mentioned that weather. We're expecting some pretty rocky weather for your Wednesday here. Some of those additional details, the latest information this morning as those blazes do continue to burn. 2 major ones in Polk County that really have got the eyes of forest fire crews all over the United States, with members of the North Carolina Forest Service saying that one in Polk County, specifically the Black Cove fire, is the, quote, highest priority fire in the United States, with the Forest Service saying that millions of residents across the region do need to remain under alert for those fires. The Black Cove fire is currently 17% contained. It has scorched more than 3,500 acres, almost 5 square miles. The other big one is the Deep Woods fire. It's more than 3,000 acres in size and is currently 11% contained. And the Fishhook fire, which is a smaller one, not far from Hendersonville, is 199 acres, 86% containment there. So we, of course, continue to track those details as a statewide burn ban continues into effect, and weather conditions as we head into the weekend do not look to improve in any meaningful or substantial way. It is still going to be a major issue. Governor Josh Stein said, quote, "We are still under a statewide burn ban. I continue to urge residents to pay close attention to local emergency alerts and evacuation notices." We'll continue to track the fires right here on the Carolina Journal News Hour, where it's 546, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Time to get another look at the roadways on your Friday morning. An update on traffic with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, thanks. Hot.
It's 5:51. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. I'm Nick Craig. Good morning to you. We are continuing to track what has been a busy couple of weeks out of the North Carolina General Assembly to get some details on some legislation that has been introduced by North Carolina Democrat senators and members of the House. Katie Zehnder, CarolinaJournal.com, joins us to talk about right to work. Katie, good morning. Thanks for the time. Tell us a little bit about what you're tracking out of Raleigh.
Hi, good morning, Nick. Yeah, so some Democratic state lawmakers have introduced three separate bills in both the House and Senate last week that would essentially roll back and repeal a lot of the restrictions that were implemented by NC Right to Work laws, which we're coming up on the 75th anniversary of here in just a couple of weeks. March 18th will be the 75th anniversary of the ratification of NC Right to Work.
Can you give us some details and walk us through right to work? What is currently on the books here in North Carolina, and then what are these lawmakers looking at changing or attempting to change?
Right. So right to work is essentially law that was ratified into the general statutes of the state. And essentially these measures outlaw requiring union membership as a condition of hiring or continued employment. And so basically what these laws do is they ban contracts between employers and labor unions or labor organizations that would prohibit either union membership or non-membership as a condition of hiring or, a guarantee of continued employment here in the state of North Carolina.
And this, of course, for individuals that may have come from our northern states where union strongholds are a little bit bigger, you come down here to North Carolina. For example, Katie, the North Carolina Teachers Association, the education union, only has about a third of teachers in public schools in North Carolina that are members because part of the condition of their employment is they can't require them. Walk us through some of this legislation, the changes that these Democrats are trying to make.
Right. So there's three separate bills that have been introduced, one in the House and two in the Senate. And the first one is called HB 256, and it was introduced by Representative Zach Hawkins. He's a Democrat out of Durham. So this would allow for public sector employees to have collective bargaining rights. This would allow for employers to bargain through a representative with their employers concerning wages, hours, and terms and conditions of employment. So this has a huge impact on, any public sector employees, teachers, police officers, firefighters. And so I got a quote from Representative Hawkins, and he said, "Now more than ever, it's time to lift the prohibition on collective bargaining rights for public employees. I introduced this bill in our last session because this year I believe that our teachers, firefighters, police officers, and dedicated public servants should have the same rights as any other workers in this state." Now, one thing that's important to note is collective bargaining rights also impact, the right to strike. And so if this bill would be passed into law, which is extremely unlikely at this point, but it would allow for these public sector workers like firefighters and police officers, allow them the right to strike as well. So that's going to have a significant impact on public safety and those kinds of things. And then there were two bills introduced in the Senate last week. Both the bills were introduced by Senators Lisa Grafstein, Greg Meyer, and Natalie Murdoch. All three of those are Democrat lawmakers here in the state of North Carolina out of Wake, Orange, and Durham counties. And so the first one is SB 120, which would allow labor unions and organizations to enter into labor agreements. And so it would essentially gut NC Right to Work laws. And then the second bill is SB 169, which amends the general statutes to allow union dues to be tax deductible. And so I reached out to Senator Grafstein, and she gave me a quote, and she said, SB 120 would eliminate certain state regulations of the relationship between an employer and a union. Current laws bar an employer and a union from contracting or agreeing to have a traditional union shop where employees are members of the union. And then she goes on to say, concerning the bill which relates to union dues, she said this bill would provide the balance to a bargaining relationship, giving workers improved ability to act collectively. And then she addresses, collective bargaining rights as well. So some of those bills do touch on collective bargaining rights as well as HB 256, which was introduced in the House.
You bring all of this up, and you kind of maybe buried the lead a little bit there, Katie. You mentioned that there's a very, very small likelihood that something like this goes forward. Safe to assume that Republicans in the General Assembly that do control the legislature, they don't have an appetite for anything like this?
Right. So it's very unlikely that this is going to move forward or be passed into law. I did have a chance to speak with the CEO of the John Locke Foundation, Donald Bryson, and he said, these bills are a clear attempt by big labor to undermine worker choice and force unionization. And he said that really what lawmakers should be doing is rejecting these attacks, but instead making moves to enshrine right to work and other worker and taxpayer protections in the state constitution, which would prohibit, future legislatures from kind of rolling back these laws as we're seeing an attempt right now.
Katie, you've got some additional quotes and some more details, 3 different bills, 3 different pieces of legislation. Where can folks go and read those details this morning?
Right, yeah, they can read the full article where I walk through all of the changes in the legislation and what that would do to NC Right to Work at carolinajournal.com.
A great update this morning. Katie Zehnder joins us on the Carolina Journal News Hour. It's now 5:56, and as we look at some of this legislation that has continued to be introduced, we are approaching, in one chamber, we have already hit the filing deadline. In the Senate, it was Tuesday of this week, so there will be no new legislation filed out of the North Carolina Senate, and coming up next Thursday is when the House filing deadline takes place for the 2025 long session that we are in right now, so likely as we head into the early parts of next week to see a flurry of new pieces of legislation being introduced ahead of that Thursday deadline. We'll, of course, keep an eye on all of it over on our website, carolinajournal.com, and right here on the Carolina Journal News Hour. That's going to do it for a Friday edition. WBT News is next, followed by Good Morning BT. We're back with you Monday morning, 5 to 6, right here on News Talk 1110 and 99.3 WBT.